Tonight, Question Time has come to the cathedral city of Lincoln in the East Midlands. This seat is in Labour hands, but the wider Lincolnshire area remains dominated by the Conservatives, with the exception of nearby Boston and Skegness, which now has a Reform MP. In the last few hours, our local audience members have been queuing up to face our panel and preparing their questions, and as a group, as usual, they reflect the general electoral picture across the nation. And tonight, they want to talk about Labour's performance so far, particularly on immigration and net zero, and we may even get time to talk about Donald Trump and Elon Musk. Welcome to Question Time. On the panel from the government is Jacqui Smith. She's a minister in the Department of Education. Previously, she was Home Secretary in Gordon Brown's government. Before losing her seat in 2010, she now sits in the House of Lords. Kevin Hollinrake is Shadow Secretary for Levelling Up, Housing and Communities. After a career in business, he entered Parliament in 2015 and was Business and Trade Minister in the last Conservative government. Making his second appearance as a panellist since 2019 is Nigel Farage, who's a leader of Reform UK. This time last year, he was a celebrity in the jungle, but this summer, he was elected to the Commons for the first time, alongside 4 other colleagues, his party receiving over 4 million votes. And Alastair Campbell spent many years as advisor to Labour Prime Minister Tony Blair. He's a writer of several books, the latest about how to get involved in politics, and now presents one of the country's leading podcasts, The Rest is Politics. Good evening. Welcome to our panellists. Welcome to our audience here in Lincoln. Very nice to see you all. And, of course, welcome to you at home as well. You can join in the programme on social media. We are on BBC iPlayer and we are on BBC Sounds. We are everywhere. So let's get started with our first question, which is from Gary Wright.
Good evening. Is the Labour government's plans for change announced today a bold strategy or a cry for forgiveness?
So Labour has been in government for 5 months now. And what you're referring to, Gary, I believe, is Keir Starmer setting out what he called his plan for change with new measurable milestones by which we should judge the Labour government at the end of the Parliament, if not before. Jacqui, a bold strategy or cry for forgiveness so far?
I think it's bold. I think it's the right thing to do. Let's not forget, when we fought the election, our call was for change, and that's the basis on which we were elected. And one of the changes that people wanted to see, frankly, was to get away from the sort of chaos, political and economic, of the last government, and they voted for that. But they also voted for things that were going to impact positively on their lives. And what Keir has done today is to say, right, we have broad missions that we want to change the country with over the next 10 years, but it's also important that we demonstrate how those are going to materially impact people. How are people going to feel better off? How are they going to be confident that their kids are getting the best start in life? How are they going to know they're going to get speedier access to an operation, be more confident about their community because they're more likely to see police there? How are we going to shift away from this reliance on fossil fuels and the cost that that's brought us? Those are the practical things that Keir has laid out today that people will be able to judge this government on.
Gary, since you asked the question, you said bold change or cry for forgiveness, which do you think it is?
I think it's a cry for forgiveness, to be honest with you, because you've just said we wanted to move away from the chaos. I don't think we've moved very far away from chaos. I think there's even more now than there was before. And it's just through the things like the budget has caused chaos. There's no change to the migration figures. In fact, they're going up even more now. So I don't see in the last 5 months any stability in a new government. If anything, it's caused more chaos.
Kevin?
Well, listen, I do not take any pleasure in the fact it's been the worst start for any government in history. I mean, it has been desperate.
Worse than Liz Truss's?
Yeah, I think it has been worse than Liz Truss's.
Really?
Because it's right across... It's not just about the economy. It's right across the piece. Listen, I don't defend Liz Truss. I didn't back her in the first place.
Sounds like you are.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And we deserve to lose the last election. This is not about politicking. This is bad for the country. It's bad for the people here. It's bad for my constituents. And the decline in business confidence more than anything. If you've seen what you don't do in terms of business, and as you said, I was in business for 30 years before politics, you don't tell business people it's all terrible, it's all gloom and doom, even though it wasn't. And then there's going to be some huge tax rises coming down the road, even when you said it was all fully funded and fully costed, all those things. So really is bad. And I think if you're sat there at home today listening to that speech, if you're a farmer, if you're a pensioner, if you're a business person, you won't be convinced at all that this is some kind of reset, because all those things are baked in. This budget was bad for business. The new red tape around employment rules are bad for business and bad for the economy. And that's why the economy, from growing quickly in the first half of this year, has come to a grinding halt. It is very bad. Labour needs to completely reverse what they're doing, not simply rebadge it with what they've done today.
Your leader said she wasn't going to reverse the national insurance.
That's not what she said at all, Jacqui. Well, you want to listen to what she said?
She's keen on the extra money, but like the last government, she's not clear about where it's going to come from.
We're very clear where it's coming from. It's welfare reforms, and it's making the public sector more efficient. What you did, your first act, was to pay train drivers exactly what they wanted, and public sector workers without any strings attached in terms of productivity. That's how you pay for these things. That's not what you did.
All right, let's hear a bit from our audience. So the man there in the blue gilet, I think is the right word for that.
Yes, I want to know how they're going to pay for it all. This 22 million black hole that we're supposed to have, where's the money going to come from for all this improvement?
OK, we'll get to that. Man in the yellow jumper.
So, as we've got a cabinet made up of mainly public sector workers with no private sector experience, how are they going to hope to complete all of the things that they've laid out today?
All right, so you're decrying the lack of experience. Alastair, what did you think of what you heard today?
Well, I don't accept at all that this government is as chaotic as the last one. What I do accept, and I'm sure Keir Starmer does, is that it's not exactly got off to the longest honeymoon in history. I think we probably had that back in 1997, because it seemed to go on for a good 3 years before the press stopped saying the honeymoon was over, the honeymoon was over. There's a few things I'd say. The first is, I do think politics has got harder, for all sorts of reasons. One of them is populism, one of them is a much more aggressive media, one of them is social media, one of them is the public are much more demanding. There's nothing wrong with that, but it has made it harder. The second thing I'd say is government is a lot harder than opposition, and I think that it's harder being a Labour government than a Conservative government in this country. I think history would suggest that.
Why would you say that?
Because I think we've got a pretty biased media, and I think the media are absolutely kicking Keir Starmer as hard as they can most of the time. So the point on the substance of what you're saying, though, I think that everything that Keir said today, if a Labour government can do all of those things, I will back them all. But government isn't just about the specifics that you're talking about. Part of government and part of leadership is about the story that you're telling to the country. It's about the narrative that you're building. And it's about the constant sense of having a conversation with the public that even if the public don't like what you're doing, they have a sense of what it's for and where it's going. And I think that's where I think the government has not been as strong as it should be.
So Keir Starmer today launched 5 missions. I mean, I just had a little look at the various things that have been going on in the last 5 months. We've had 3 foundations, 5 missions, 6 milestones and 7 pillars. Now, it's my job to follow these things. I couldn't tell you what they all are. As a former communications advisor, what do you think of that?
I can see why there are issues around clarity. But this goes to my point. The most important thing in government's dealing with everything, hundreds and thousands of different issues and challenges. But when you're leading a country, the sense of strategy has got to be absolutely clear. And I still think, by the way, I haven't heard much of it yet, but I still think there's an awful lot of goodwill towards this government. People want this government to succeed. The answer to the gentleman's question, by the way, is that the money came from tax rises that the public don't like and that business doesn't like. And these are some of the tough choices that they're having to make. I think Kevin's being a bit disingenuous when he sort of says that the current state of the government is down to everything that this government has done in the short time it's been there. When they talk about having inherited a broken Britain, I'm afraid they did.
All right, well, hang on. Let's bring in Nigel, who's not managed to get a word in yet. A plan for change, a bold strategy or a cry for forgiveness?
So I sat and watched, listened to Keir Starmer's speech, and I was very pleased with myself. I managed to stay awake right until the very end. which, given how bland the delivery was, how scripted the whole thing was, how lacking in any sense of emotion or message delivery, was remarkable. Bold, it was not. And actually, it was all a reiteration of what we've heard already. They want to build 1.5 million homes, exactly the same as the last government. They're on a mad rush to net zero energy production, as was the last government, which, of course, will make us poorer and not richer as a country, so they'll fail on the economic markers as well. If it was a plea for forgiveness, it ain't going to work. And it's extraordinary that the single biggest issue in terms of the impact on accessibility to GP services, in terms of accessibility to housing, in terms of infrastructure, and all of those things, is the exploding population. And the exploding population is because Alastair Campbell's lot opened the door, and then Kevin's lot accelerated it in a way that had never been seen in the history of these islands. And yet, the 6 milestones doesn't even mention immigration, the boats, or anything. And I actually genuinely think that the milestones will become millstones as they fail on every single one of them.
OK. So, just to let you know, Nigel, we are taking a question on immigration a bit further down the programme, so we are going to be looking at that. Yes, let's... the man there in the check shirt and the brown jacket.
The gentleman asked earlier where the money was going to come from. From what I've been reading today, it would seem that private business is going to have to work 7 days a week, while the public sector spends it in 4.
OK. Man at the back. Yeah. The man at the... sorry, the man at the back with the glasses, yes, he's in the dark jacket, yeah.
Yeah, so you spoke earlier about the foundations. I was really disappointed to not see anything about defence and the 2.5%.
OK. And these 2 women here at the front, yes, one in the white sweater.
Hello. You talked about clarity with all the different things that are being sent out to us with rhetoric, is basically what it is. The government has had several years to clarify exactly what they want to do and how they're going to fund it. All the time during the election process, we heard fully funded, fully costed. The second they got into government, it was, oh, we didn't realise it was as bad as it is. We're going to have to put up taxes. They must have known. If they didn't, what are they doing in opposition?
Well, not only did we not know, the Office for Budget Responsibility didn't know, because there was... But that's true, Kevin.
It's just absolutely...
And just in the Education Department, you know, we arrive in the Education Department, there are pledges that have been made for early years entitlements, for example, that haven't been funded. There's a teacher's pay review body report sitting in the desk of the former Secretary of State with no way to pay for it. So there was a £22 billion.
Absolutely wrong.
There was a £22 billion black hole. And the first thing that we had to do, and one of the foundations, is to get economic and fiscal stability back into the system again. And I'll come back to defence again if I've got...
So is that why you hit the pensioners the way you did?
Absolutely.
You hit the pensioners, you know, and there are millions of pensioners who are going to struggle like crazy over the course of this winter, whilst you've got ballooning budgets, £5 billion a year on asylum, let alone. Surely the targets you've gone for with pensioners and farmers will actually get you, if there is a £22 billion back hole, an absolute tiny amount of that. If you hadn't given massive pay rises to train drivers and public sector workers, those pensioners would still have their fuel allowance. Sure.
Jacqui, as you know, of £9 billion, and this is in the OBR report on the budget, £9 billion of that £22 billion, supposedly £22 billion, was because of the payments to public sector workers. What Alastair wouldn't have done when they were in office, they would not have settled those pay claims at face value without any quid pro quo, any strings attached. They'd have wanted productivity improvements which they could have paid for the pay rises themselves. It's a contrived figure. Everybody knows it's a nonsensical figure. And in terms of this point about broken Britain, you remember 2 years ago, we went through a very difficult time. Inflation running at 11%, the economy looked forecast to go into a recession. We handed over inflation running at 2%. This economy was growing the fastest in the G7 in the first 2 quarters of this year. All those things have been reversed. Inflation is going to go up. Interest rates won't drop so quickly. because of the budget, huge mistakes across the piece. Rachel Reeves needs to look at what she's done and reverse what she's done, because this will last for years in terms of a problem.
But Jacqui's made the point that Kemi Badenoch hasn't given a clear counter-strategy. I just want to make one final point that I was disappointed. And Nigel says that immigration is the big bursting issue. I was disappointed Keir didn't mention Brexit, because I think Brexit has done so much damage to this country. Well, I'm sorry, Nigel. I'm sorry. Nigel doesn't want to accept.
You are the worst loser in history, Alastair.
No.
Get over it. It's 8 years
Nigel,
ago. Move on.
No, you won.
It's done.
You're the worst winner.
It's done.
Because you've never taken responsibility for what you've won.
It's done. No, we're independent, we're free, and we're not part of that Eurozone that's collapsing around its ears.
No, I'll tell you what you are, Nigel.
We're out.
I'll tell you what you
we're
are.
free.
I'll tell you what you are. You're somebody, and we've seen it already tonight, you're somebody who will exploit any problem going for your own political ends. Brexit was a fundamentally damaging thing to this country. That is your one legacy, and you now don't even want to talk about it, because even you know...
I want to talk about it.
Even you know that it has damaged this country, it's made us poorer, it's made us weaker, and it's hit our standing in the world.
No, you know, as I say, this major decision was taken 8 years ago. It gave us the chance. Gave us a chance
5%
to be significantly richer. Gave us the chance to control our borders.
We didn't do it your way.
All those things, and sadly, this mob, the Tories, didn't do any of it.
If we'd done it Nigel's way, it would all have been sunlit.
Would you rather be like France right now, or Germany
no, I wouldn't.
right now? Well,
the comparison is what we would be if we'd have stayed in. 5% bigger economy.
No, we'd have joined the Euro if you'd had your way back 30 years ago.
You see, what you'll do is you'll throw up a different...
Hang on, don't talk at the same time.
It's over. The war is over.
I'm sorry about that, Nigel, because I think you'll find
the war is over.
Young people in this country know that you've taken their future away from them, and they will get it back.
Move on.
Well, it's started, hasn't it? I mean, what can I say? I am going to move on, not because you're suggesting it, Nigel, but because I want to take another question. But before I do, I just want to say where we're going to be next week, which is in Beckenham, in South London. That's for our last programme before Christmas. And then when we come back in January, we'll be in Northampton. So if you'd like to come and put in your 10penneth as a member of the audience, go to the Question Time website and you can follow the instructions there. So that's Beckenham next week and Northampton when we come back in January. Right. Ben Whittle, where are you? There you are.
How do we balance controlling our borders, welcoming diversity and addressing pressure on local communities and services?
Right, how do you balance controlling our borders, welcoming diversity and, at the same time, address pressure on communities and services? So, let's look at legal migration. Legal migration in 2023 was nearly 1 million. Illegal migration is a tiny fraction of that, it's just 3 to 4%. Legal migration is by far and away the largest part. And, of course, this happened on your watch, Kevin.
It did, yeah. The bar was set far too low in terms of migration, no doubt about it. We failed on it. And, we couldn't control our borders until 2020, and I think most people that I speak to do want to control our borders. We now have the controls at our disposal. We didn't set them in the right place, for whatever reason.
What's interesting is having done this programme for a while, and quite a lot of it during Conservative government, I don't remember anyone from Conservative government sitting there whenever migration came up and saying, yeah, we've really screwed this up. Whereas now, every Conservative that comes on says, yeah, we got all that wrong.
Do you want me to be honest or not?
I do. A bit of honesty when you're in government might have been good too.
Honest about all the way through my 9 years in politics. So we got it wrong. But the situation we have now, we have the controls at our disposal. We've already started to tighten those controls. Not enough, in my view, but we did that when we were in office. So that's why you saw a 20% drop in recent figures. So we can control this. As the leader of the opposition has said, Kemi has said, we want this way below the 350. It's about 700 at this point in time. So we need to secure the borders. It should be us deciding who comes to this country in terms of legal migration. That's a relatively simple exercise to do. We've tightened up things like student visas.
Because part of the reason legal migration is only part, because actually quite a small part of them are actually workers, but nonetheless they are workers that are being used in this country. Yeah. So if Kemi is talking about 350,000, what kind of time...
No, it's not talking about 350. She's talking about a figure way lower than 350,000.
OK. And what kind of time frame, realistically, could one expect that?
We can't do anything probably until 2029.
No, I know you can't, but nonetheless, if you're saying this thing, you must have some idea in your head.
Well, these controls can be put in place very, very quickly. The controls we've already put in place have reduced it over a short period of time by 20%.
There are trade-offs, these jobs need to be filled by somebody.
In 2029, we get elected, this could be down to the numbers that people think is right, which I think we are way too high right now, there's no question about it. The other aspect of this, of course, is illegal migration, which is, we've been frustrated every single turn in terms of illegal migration by the Labour Party. 134 times they've voted against Rwanda. We know it is a deterrent. We know that other countries are looking at this as a deterrent. It's the right policy, but this was frustrated every turn by Labour. We can put those controls in place. We will be able to put those provisions in place to control what most people are most worried about, which is illegal migration.
Nigel Farage.
How can you, as a Conservative Party, keep a straight face to this audience, to the nation, having promised in 2010, 2015, 2017, you'd reduce net migration to tens of thousands a year. In 2019, substantial reductions and net migrations nearly 1 million. You've broken your promise time after time after time.
But if you're honest with people, Nigel,
you will never be forgiven for it. You haven't got a cat's chance in hell of winning the next general election. Shame on you for what you've done. It was willful, it was deceptive, it was deliberate, and it was wrong. And the worst part of it, Ben asked about, the impact on communities, the impact on services. The worst part of it
He also talked about welcoming diversity.
Well, we'll talk about diversity in a second. The problem with welcoming diversity is if you do it in too big a level, you get division. And we're seeing that in many of our towns. The last 2 million that came from outside the EU under your watch, only 16% of them are working. Only 16% of that 2 million are working, which means they're dependents, which means they're using schools, the health service, all of these things. And we now know the truth, that selective immigration can be very good for diversity, very good for the economy, very good for all of those things. And you could argue that for decades, up until the early 2000s, it was working really well. But now, not only is it a catastrophe for people's way of life, not only does it deny them access to services, mass immigration is making Britain poorer. And the fact that Keir Starmer today doesn't seem to think it's a priority shows you that with these two parties, it is only going to get worse.
Nigel, you be honest with people.
We need a complete... We need to leave the ECHR so we can deport people that come illegally and take back control of our borders and our lives.
You be honest with people.
And that's what the public wants.
You know we could not control our borders to 2020. Following that, you had COVID. Following that, you had Ukraine and Hong Kong. Which of those people would you have not let into this country?
I'm sorry.
That's
I'm
what's
really
happened.
sorry.
Now we have got...
No.
Now we have got leaders at our
Kevin,
disposal.
in 2023,
you know that's true.
In 2023, we were not taking people from
You
Ukraine.
are not the only person
we were not
in this
taking people from Hong Kong.
who's concerned about migration.
We were not... Well,
we are also concerned about migration. I personally am concerned about it.
If you were concerned, I'm amazed you stood for the party again at the general election, giving that level of betrayal. It is shameful.
We made mistakes. We made a mistake.
OK, all right.
Yes, of course, the mistake.
Let's bring the rest of the panel in.
40 years of mistakes.
Alastair.
I mean, I'm glad that the question was framed in the way that it was, because I think most people in Britain are tolerant up to a point, but they want to know that there is a system, that there are rules and that they work. And what's happened in recent years is that the systems and the rules, frankly, appear to have broken down. I think Labour actually are starting to get a grip of it. I think the returns, we've seen the figures this week on the returns, which are pretty good. But at the risk of triggering Nigel again, I'm going to mention...
here we go.
I'm going to mention the B word. Because Brexit was about getting your borders under control.
Yes.
Since Brexit, we have lost control. So the people...
Why?
The people that were coming here, often not to stay for long, Polish, French nurses, Polish plumbers, often who were going back, they've left because we've left the European Union and been replaced by hundreds of thousands of people and their dependents from Nigeria, from India. Now, is that what Nigel Farage wanted when he was telling you that we were going to get control of our borders? Was that what Boris Johnson promised you when he was telling you all those lies? And all I'd say, and the other point I would make, is that you had Rory Stewart on the panel last week. I know that, my podcast co-presenter. And he made a point which we both think is incredibly important in this debate. Because we're an ageing population, when I was growing up, people were getting their pension, there were 20 people of working age for every pensioner, and they were working. Now you've got fewer than 3. So the idea that we can cope with this ageing population and a low birth rate without thinking and understanding we have to get people from abroad coming to work here.
If they work.
If they work. Yeah. And that's why the rules and the systems have to work. So you've got to fix the rules, you've got to fix the systems, but for heaven's sake, if we follow the sort of demonising immigrants rhetoric of Trump and Farage and these guys, we'll actually put people off even wanting to come here to work.
They are in
so let's be open and honest about the need for migration, let's get the rules and systems in place and let's make them work, and let's stop demonising anybody who is not what we consider to be British.
Let's hear from our audience. The man in front, the blue sweater.
Legal migration, yes, I agree with it. We need it and we should do it. And it does help
in the
with
numbers
diversity.
we have at the moment?
The numbers should be dictated by what the government says is where we need the places to be. At the moment, I feel we are rewarding illegal immigration. And people coming into this country are being paid to come here. Why do they not stop at other countries? They come all the way here.
What do you mean they're being paid to come here? They're paying to come here.
Well, they're paid to get here,
yes,
but when they're here,
yes, they're not being paid to come here. They're paying to come here.
They're being paid weekly to live here, and as you've already mentioned,
in terms of
most
receiving
are not working
benefits,
because they can't or whatever. But that's illegal migration. Legal migration should always be the way we should do it, and not illegal.
And in terms of benefits, you're referring to the £49 a week that
yes.
someone can claim if they're asylum. Hang on, Alistair, let me just get... Do you mind? I'll just get around the audience a little bit more. No, I will, Jacqui, I haven't forgotten you. Yes, there's lots... Yes, the man with the red check shirt, yeah.
I feel that Alistair's putting a spin on that there.
No.
I feel that we've had Tory governments, we've had Labour governments in my lifetime. They've all lost control. I feel like there's only one party that's going to control immigration in this country, and that's Reform. I'm afraid.
Okay. Someone here in the red jacket.
Well, I agree entirely that it probably is only Reform, because it's the amount that are coming over on these boats. They're young men. They're not working. Let's go forward 5, 10 years. Where will they be then? Still in this country, not working? And we, and I'm a pensioner, we are paying for these people day in and day out for their accommodation. Where are they going in 5, 10, 20 years' time?
So can I ask you, do you think there are any grounds on which people should be able to come here and claim asylum?
The only grounds that I think that people should be allowed to come into the country is if they had the sufficient qualifications to do the jobs that we probably need.
And as far as asylum goes?
I don't believe in any asylum. I really don't. I think we have taken more than our fair share in this country. I feel very sorry for the little towns, little villages that these people have been put, where people have lived all their lives, and they're frightened.
But
they're absolutely frightened.
Do you feel sorry for the people who are fleeing war? Do you feel sorry for people fleeing persecution?
I think there's far too much made of this, that they're fleeing wars.
OK.
Right. All right. Jacqui, you want...
Thank you. Thank you.
Is there a war in Algeria? Is there a war in Morocco? Is there a war... Where are they coming from?
Well,
Syria?
Lots from Syria. Can I just... One point, we're 5th in Europe. In terms of the numbers of asylum seekers, we are 5th in Europe. One of the ways that this debate has developed is the idea that they're all coming here.
Right.
Germany's number one.
Okay. All right, let's let Jacqui in.
Sorry, Jacqui.
Thanks, guys. I'm proud to live in a country, by the way, that provides shelter to people who have come from horrific circumstances. It's part of what it means to be British, to do that. But it also has to be a foundation of this country that we can control our borders and that we do that in a serious way that avoids some of the gimmickry that we've heard about the Rwanda scheme, which of course cost £700 million and sent 4 volunteers back to Rwanda. It means more than standing on a beach and pointing at the problem, Nigel. It means
predicting the problem.
It means getting down...
I predicted it. I was right.
It means getting down to the actual graft of what you have to do. And that means increasing the numbers of asylum claims that you are judging, and we've increased the productivity there. It means sending people back when they haven't got a right to be in this country, and we've increased the numbers of returns in the time that we've been in government. And it means properly integrating people and making sure that they are working and contributing to our communities if they've got a right to stay here. When it comes to legal migration, one of the things that I think is most shocking about the way that legal migration ballooned under the last government was the failure to recognise that a lot of that was in order to fill skills gaps that the last government did nothing to close. When I was in the Home Office in 2009, we began to think about how you could link whether or not employers bring people to this country with the extent to which they're also training their staff. I was gobsmacked when I got back into government as Skills Minister that nothing had happened on that over the period of the Tory government. So we've got to have a situation where people have a contribution to make to this country that we can't provide here, they should be welcome, but we can't simply solve our skills gap and support employers by not investing in our domestic pipeline of skills.
Jacqui,
and we've got to be able to do that in order to make sure that people do feel, and I understand the strength of feeling here, but people do feel that the system is fair and the system is controlled.
Let me hear a bit more, because there's lots of hands up. The man in the red sweater there in the middle.
Yeah, I just recently went to the Holocaust Centre just outside of Newark, and it was a real wake-up call, because the Germany in the 1930s, they were suffering economic difficulties because of the reparations of the First World War. And these people were desperate and was looking for something to improve their life. And somebody would say, look, the problem with our society is the Jews. That's what's causing the problem. We will blame the Jews because they are ruining our country. Go forward now to this country. We are now blaming migrants. We are blaming immigrants for the ways in which our society is run. Migrants, illegal or legal, weren't responsible for austerity. That was the Conservative government. Migrants and illegals were not responsible for Brexit. Migrants were not responsible for Liz Truss's failure as leadership. And don't forget, because those populist policies in the 30s, a certain Adolf Hitler was elected. And if we follow the same rhetoric, the same blaming of migrants, we will go in the same way. And the future of that path is very, very bleak.
The last Labour government deported people who came here illegally in their tens of thousands.
But do you want to respond to Sam's point?
I'm going to. Tens of thousands. So here's the point. The point is, if people come legally and they work, that's fine. If people come because they're genuinely refugees, we've always opened our doors as a country more than anybody in the world, historically, to that.
So can I say, so you don't agree with the woman here in the red jacket?
Tens of thousands of undocumented young males crossing the English Channel are not refugees in any classic sense of the word. And my fear is, since the time of the last Labour government, the European Court has become more activist. We must deport people who are not refugees, who come to Britain illegally. Is only fair and
We've increased the number of returns.
So can I just...
We've already increased the number of returns.
So can I just... So you do not agree with the woman here in the red jacket?
The comment she made about hotels being set up in communities...
No, it's specifically about...
no,
just one second. Specifically about asylum seekers, we shouldn't be taking any.
Well, genuine refugees, we've always taken. We've done it with Jewish people, Huguenots. We've always done it, but we cannot do it in unlimited numbers. And what is happening right now, sir, are not genuine refugees, and that really is the point.
Can I just tackle that lady's point? You said that not all these people are coming from war-torn countries. And you are right. The country, the place that most people were coming from in terms of people crossing the Channel was Vietnam. Vietnam they're coming from. There's no war in Vietnam. So you're right to say that we should deal with it. We cannot solve the problems of this entire planet. There will be hundreds of millions of people when it comes to the UK because we're a great country. That's why people want to come. I understand that, but we can't solve those problems. Now, Jacqui, Rwanda was working. The reality is when people were speaking to the people traffickers on the other side of the Channel, they were saying, We're waiting until we get a Labour government. People are going to Ireland instead of coming to the UK. You cancelled it. You triggered that cost. Rwanda would work. And the trouble is, Nigel, you're not the only person who cares about migration. You're not the only person who cares about
party doesn't.
What you don't understand is the hard graft trying to get that legislation past Labour. 134 times they voted against it. That's what you don't understand.
In 14 years, you weren't able to get the system working so that it could actually make quick judgments about people's asylum claims and either return
Well, that's just going to draw more people over, Jacqui. That's what's going to happen.
No, it's not. You make a quick decision and then you send people back. You weren't able to either make a quick decision or to send people back, and nor were you willing to work internationally. Nor were you willing to work internationally, as Yvette Cooper and Keir Starmer have been willing to. Just this week, we've been able to sign an agreement with Iraq.
The numbers
that will
have gone
help
up
us to send people back.
63%. The numbers since you took over have gone up 63%. Show me how effective that policy is.
We are making decisions quicker, we are returning more people, and we're doing the hard grind of working internationally rather than gimmickry, which is what the last government depended on.
I think, just on the point of this gentleman's point, I think is the most important point that's been made tonight, though, because we've just seen elected in the United States Donald Trump, who I know Nigel's very, very fond of, and I do think, I'm making a serious point here, Nigel, I do think the language that Donald Trump used about immigrants, they were all vermin. They were all poisoning our blood. That was straight out.
That is outrageous, Alastair, and you know it.
No, it's not. Why is that
outrageous?
Because you believe in immigration controls.
Trump is pro.
No, I'm not saying it is.
Trump is very pro-legal. Trump is very pro-legal immigration into America. Very pro it indeed. He's not pro criminal gangs using the southern border, and
that's what this gentleman's talking about. He's talking about the demonisation.
He was talking about Jewish people, the Holocaust Museum, and genuine refugees. These are different things.
Hang on.
These are different things.
Well, what I said was you were using the language of demonising. I wasn't talking about Jews. I was talking about migrants. You made the point about illegal migrants.
Yes.
Yeah. Coming in there tens of thousands.
Yes.
OK, so this year it's 40,000.
Yes.
That's a minute proportion of the 1 million immigrants you're talking about.
I know.
And
which is wrong as well.
And consequently, that's your main biggest beef of 40,000 people coming to this country. Your policies fall on the wayside because you're talking absolute nonsense. 40,000 is a speck in the ocean.
Oh, let them all come in.
And every asylum speaker that I've ever spoken to, everybody who's come here because of asylum, they're not coming here for a better life.
Oh, yeah.
The majority of them are coming for a life.
No. No, I'm sorry.
Let's end it there, because I want to take another question.
Sorry.
And you make your point very powerfully, sir. OK. Natasha McBride, there you are.
Is the expense of net zero justifiable during a cost of living crisis?
Nigel.
Insane, unachievable, can't be done. Done with the best of intentions, but with a total lack of knowledge of how power systems work, of how dependent we are on electricity. And frankly, we're beggaring ourselves. Do you know, we have the most expensive electricity in the world. Is it any wonder that our steelworks are closing? Is it any wonder that our biggest refinery is about to close in Scotland? Is it any wonder both aluminium smelters are gone? Our chemicals are going. We are closing down. There is an industrial manufacturing, literally, catastrophe going on because of our net zero policies. All you individually, your households for the last 20 years have been paying 15 to 20% more on your electricity bills to subsidise foreign companies building great big wind farms in the North Sea. Do we want good energy? Do we want good, clean energy? Do we care about the environment? Yes, yes and yes to all of those things.
So what's your policy? What is Reform's policy?
Well, there is no question that governments have ducked nuclear.
But what's your policy?
Well, we should have done what Alastair should have done when he was there, which is to renew Britain's nuclear energy, which produces zero carbon energy 24/7. It's not intermittent. Labour ducked it.
So
the Tories ducked it. And now we have the beauty of small modular reactors, not those old monsters we were building in the 50s and 60s. And all I will say is this on wind energy. If it can pay for itself, fine. But what Ed Miliband has done, he's struck 171 deals at high strike prices. Our energy costs will go up over the next few years. We'll be poorer. It's why the milestones that were set this morning won't be reached. And I think net zero is going to be an absolute catastrophe electorally for Labour.
So were you in government, which I know
Yeah.
is what you want to be, at the moment both Labour and the Conservatives are committed to net zero by 2050.
Impossible.
So you would ditch that?
I would say that if renewable energy is to work, it should not be subsidised by a penny of these people's money. And I would say we need to be self-sufficient. We will be using, even the most fanatical of people around the climate accept, we'll be using oil and gas still in 2050. Let us produce our own oil, our own gas, make our own steel, produce all of our own goods. If that means our carbon emissions as a country go up, actually, the carbon emissions where it's now being produced in India will go down. Let's have a common sense, grown-up approach to this and stop making people poorer. Simple as that.
One of the things that's made people poorer over the last few years, Nigel, was the last government's failure to grip the way in which people's energy prices were going up. And one of the reasons that they were going up was because of our dependence on fossil fuels and our dependence on imported gas, which when there is the type of global instability that we've seen in Ukraine, increases in price and costs everybody in this room. People will be better off in two ways if we can transfer to more sustainable energy. One, because we will reduce the damage that we are doing to the climate, and I don't think that that's an inconsiderable issue to be concerned about. And secondly, because we will develop our own secure energy sources. And yes, nuclear is one of them. But so is onshore wind, so is offshore wind, so is solar. And without the planning reforms and the stability and the certainty that this government is putting into the market, we won't see that develop in the way that's going to protect not only our climate, but also people's pockets and their fuel bills.
Do you think they'll do nuclear?
Yes.
You do? You genuinely do? You really think? Because I hear all the talk about it, but will they actually commit to some of these small modular reactors? If they do, I'll praise them to the heavens, I promise you.
Will they?
Nuclear has to be an important part of that non-fossil fuel
But will
energy.
they commit?
I think, yes, I believe that we will.
All right, let's who have we got? Actually, Natasha, let's just see it. Since you asked the question, is it justifiable or not?
I think it's going to come with great financial pressure. And recently, Keir Starmer has said about the plan for change and how we're going to decarbonise the national grid, which means people's energy bills are going to go up before they're going to come back down again. And during a time of inflation and the cost of living, are people really going to be able to afford this? And especially if you look at it from a global perspective, even if we do reach net zero, other countries such as Russia, China, America, who are all massive greenhouse gas contributors, even if we do reach net zero at our given target, what big impact are we going to have in combating climate change?
OK. Woman behind you in the pink jacket.
As Natasha just said, we're 5%, I believe, of the world's carbon creation.
Less than that,
1%,
actually.
is it worse than that? At the end of the day, we have opportunities. It isn't just about wind farms on farmland, which actually should be used for farming and creating the food that we actually eat and get from our table. But we could actually put pressure on our house builders. There's an awful lot, especially around where I live, there's a massive amount of new builds going on. Not a single one of them has any solar panels on the roof. There's the opportunity. You're making people buy houses that are net zero, if you like, because you're putting solar into the build and at the point of sale.
OK. The man there in the section.
My biggest worry is that you seem to be doing solar farms, and I would imagine you're getting them from China, the panels, because they produce 80 to 90% of what the EU takes, 40% of which are produced in areas where their human rights are atrocious. Why aren't the government investing with GB Energy in UK-based companies, and especially places like Oxford PV, which is part of Oxford University, but actually had to take manufacturing out to Germany because the government wouldn't talk money with them. So they're actually producing really high products, good products,
But they're being manufactured elsewhere, that's your point.
They're being manufactured elsewhere, and they're 1 micron thick, and you can put them on a building.
Let's let Jacqui answer.
That is a very fair charge, and it's a really important point, that we also can benefit from the move to clean energy in our economy as well. And that's why we have...
But the point he's making is you're not doing it.
It's our economy benefits, but the Chinese, the Uyghurs, do not benefit because, we put our feet up and it's lovely and hunky-dory, and they're suffering, and we shouldn't be getting Chinese imports.
It's precisely my point, that we do have a challenge to bring production of the infrastructure necessary for green energy back into the UK. I completely agree with you about that.
Let her answer.
What we also need to... So, in the 5 months that we've been in government, I think we've been pretty clear that that's what we want to do. And we also need to make sure, and this comes into my area of work, that we have the people who are skilled enough to make the changes that will enable us to become more green and to help people's...
Hang on. I'm going to let other people come in if you give me, otherwise it'll be kind of like a dialogue between the two of you. Man here in the front.
So I work in the energy industry in a local company here in Lincoln. We can absolutely do this. So there's €1 billion worth of project gone into Hull. We're pushing towards using hydrogen. So we've absolutely got the skills, and we've got that here in Lincoln. My view is government legislate, but you need to attract businesses into this country to do this work. We've absolutely got the skills. We've got the infrastructure. You support us delivering it. We'll generate wealth doing it. We'll generate future markets and employ people. But I think that's the support I'm looking from the Labour government for.
Absolutely.
This woman here.
Something that the UK could seize on an opportunity to be world leading in is looking at the offsetting the cost of AI. So something that never comes up in net zero debates is the cost of using generative AI. To produce one high quality image, we're talking about using battery power of multiple mobile phones. Is that something that the government are looking at? Is there something that the UK can do to offset the cost to the world of our use of AI?
That sounds
Sometimes you can say I don't know, Jacqui.
I'm not sure is the answer to that, but it sounds like the type of imaginative thing that we should be considering, because there is an opportunity for us here, as we just heard from the last gentleman.
Let me get a response.
Both to grow our economy as well as to save people in their wallets when it comes to their fuel bill.
Is the experience of net zero justifiable during cost of living crisis? Now, interestingly, the Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch described net zero as unilateral economic disarmament. Now, of course, the target for net zero by 2050 was made legal, put into law by a former Conservative Prime Minister. So what is Kemi Badenoch talking about?
Well, actually, like Nigel, she's not a climate change sceptic, but she's a sceptic about setting a target, then working out how you're going to get there, which I can see exactly where she's coming from.
But does she support the 2050 net zero target?
She'll set that out in due course in terms of where we get to that target. I do not know at this point in time what a target will be for 2050. But in terms of the actual question, it's got to be affordable. This transition has got to be affordable. It's wrong to say the UK has not done well in this space. We've got the first, the second, the third and the fourth largest offshore wind farms in the world in the UK. 99% of all solar was installed under our jurisdiction, under our time in office. We are making that transition. Nigel's wrong to say that we did not invest in nuclear. Hinkley C, Sizewell, both investments in nuclear, and the small modular reactors programme was something we set in train. So the reason our prices are high in the UK in terms of electricity is actually because we're very heavy gas users, both in production of energy, for electricity, and in the home. And our electricity prices are tied to gas prices. And we saw that spike because of Putin invading Ukraine and the recovery from COVID. That's the reality here. So we can move to a cheaper form of electricity, but we do need to do it over time and go there gradually, have a smooth glide path.
So is your view then that the 2050 net zero target is too onerous?
What Kemi's going to do...
No, I'm asking about your view.
I honestly don't know, because I've got...
You don't know your own view? Come on, Kevin.
I don't know whether we can get to net zero by 2050. I do not know that, Fiona. You probably don't either. Anybody else in this room does either.
No, but I'm not a politician.
I'm not an energy expert, but I do believe in the ambition to tackle climate change. It's absolutely right. I think everybody on this panel agrees with that. So does Kemi. We just got to do it in a smooth glide path so that it's affordable.
Alastair.
I mean, to go back to the question, whether we can afford it, I think as a planet, we can't afford not to address climate change. It's real. I think that the recent COP was very, very disappointing. The recent conference on plastics was very, very disappointing.
But what do you say to Natasha then, who's saying, you know,
well,
I'm just not sure...
I'm speaking to Natasha now.
OK.
And so I'm saying, as a world, we can't afford it. The responsibility on governments is to try to make sure that this is done in a way that is fair and sustainable. And there is, and I thought the most telling point was from the gentleman in the front there, because there is some amazing stuff going on. The project you mentioned in Hull is going to be huge. I was talking to a guy the other day who's a business guy, British company. They're putting together this huge project in Morocco, massive solar farming in Morocco, but it's energy that's going to come into our grid. I think those sorts of projects where government is giving support doesn't necessarily involve government money, but where government is setting a strategic course. And I think that, you know, and people pick on China quite rightly in many, many ways, but say they are absolutely nailing this in some respects. I mean, I think a third of all their cars now are electric vehicles, and that's then going to
building power station.
I know that. But I'm saying that it's not all sort of one way. I think we are going to have oil and gas for a bit. I think we will have a combination.
And coal.
We will have a combination of renewables for a bit. We will have a combination of nuclear and renewables, because of the growth in them, are getting cheaper. So I think it's not as desperate.
But Natasha's question, Natasha was very, very relevant. Her comment was very relevant. The world this year will burn 8 billion tonnes of coal. Coal consumption is going up in India, in China, in Malaysia,
and it'll probably
what
go
we
up to America again.
Doesn't even scratch the surface of a CO2 problem.
OK, let me get to our final question, if I can, which is from John. So apologies, those who've got your hands up for this one. But I've got about 7 minutes. John, off you go. John Ferris.
How should our government deal with President Donald Trump and Elon Musk?
Alastair. You've got to be reasonably brief. If you can possibly manage it, well, 7 minutes.
I would separate the two. I know Elon Musk is currently very, very close to Donald Trump. I can't see that relationship being one that lasts that long. But President Trump is going to be the President of the United States. I wish that weren't the case. I think most people in Britain wish that weren't the case. However, it's a fact. And the British government has to address the British national interest by understanding that our relationship with the United States is unbelievably important to our economy, to our security, to our defence, to our intelligence. So we have to build a good relationship. That is often about personal relationships. Can I imagine Donald Trump and Keir Starmer having the sort of relationship that Tony Blair had, say, with Bill Clinton and George Bush? Probably not. But at every level of government, and in every which way, you have to try to make that relationship.
And what about Elon Musk?
Elon Musk, I think, is a very interesting character, obviously incredibly successful business person, but I worry that the closeness of such an important business figure to the president is a kind of recipe for a very, very corrupt government. And I also cannot for the life of me understand what this obsession is that Elon Musk has with trolling Keir Starmer. So I don't think he's a hugely important figure, but I don't think he's going to be around in our life in the same way quite as long as Donald Trump is.
Nigel Farage.
We should treat Trump politely. That's really the answer to the question. A bit less abuse, a bit more understanding he's won a big victory, a bit more comprehension that he's a genuine friend of ours. You know, he really does adore this country. We've got a great chance here. We can negotiate not just to avoid tariffs. We can also have a genuine trade deal on the sectors that suit us with America. And that's why I've said, as a friend of his, if I can be a bridge to help this government with America, I will, because without America, we are defenceless.
And what about Elon Musk?
Elon. Well,
and the closeness, that Alice described, the potential, the conflict of interest.
Yeah, he's very interested in British politics.
Why is he so interested?
The reason he trolls Keir Starmer is because Elon believes in free speech, and Keir Starmer locks people up who say nasty things on Facebook.
He locks people up
Jacqui, do you just want to answer that?
No, he doesn't.
No. Well, the justice system does. We've got two-tier care, we've got two-tier policing, and two-tier justice.
I'm sorry.
And that's where we are. No, it's awful.
You've done quite well, Nigel, and now you've reverted to sloganising and performative politics.
When the attackers at Manchester Airport don't actually face any charges, and people who write horrible things on Facebook go to prison, something is very wrong.
But hang on, the Prime Minister doesn't decide who goes to prison, who doesn't.
No, but he can speak out and say something, and he ought to.
I'll tell you... So, I think what the Prime Minister should be focusing on is the best interests of this country. And by the way, he had a very good dinner, as I understand it, with Donald Trump, because quite rightly, he knows that the interests of this country are best served by maintaining a close relationship with the US.
And what about Elon Musk?
With whom we share enormous security interests, with whom we share intelligence, with whom we need to trade. He's a democratically elected representative of the US people, and to maintain that relationship, he needs to maintain.
The second half of the question is about Elon Musk.
Well, I don't feel particularly strongly, I have to say, about Elon Musk. What I'm more interested in is who's democratically elected.
You've got to worry about him giving him $100 million. You've got to worry about that.
Who's democratically elected to represent the interests of a country?
I mean, if he
with
offered
which
it,
we have
Nigel,
a very close relationship.
Would you take it if he offered it?
It's a fantasy. And by the way, we won't get the money. We're not selling peerages the way all these guys did. So I can't see it happening.
That's what
Kevin. Yeah, I think one thing Elon Musk needs to realise is if people keep voting for Nigel Farage, they're going to get more of Keir Starmer. That's the reality behind this. The dinner you mentioned, Jacqui, David Lammy was at. It was an interesting conversation that in terms of some of the things he's said about Donald Trump in the past.
Well, David Lammy said apparently that he was offered second helpings at this dinner, which apparently is a great, very smart, is a great sign of acceptance. Who knew?
But yeah, US, our biggest trading partner, clearly hugely important in terms of international security. We should treat President Trump with respect. You know, I think
Elon Musk.
Absolutely. I believe there should be a greater voice for business in politics. I think politics would benefit from it in terms of a business-like approach to getting things done.
Woman here.
Oh, yeah, I'm back to the solar farms.
Oh,
the infrastructure,
okay.
because
we sort of moved on.
We moved on.
We have moved on. Do you want to say something about Trump and Musk?
Trump and Musk. Trump, yeah. I'm more worried with Trump is the world security, that with NATO, if he withdraws
support
funding
for NATO
or reduces it, what is the possibility of problems in the world?
And that's an important point, and that's exactly why Keir Starmer on Monday said we need to maintain a strong relationship with the US, and we need to rebuild a relationship with the EU, and we need to maintain our commitment to NATO. We need to maintain our place in the world, rebuild our place in the world, because that is in our best interest.
Man there in the green tie and the glasses, yeah.
It's always been said that we get the politicians we deserve. So the Americans have got Trump for a while now, haven't they?
Okay, good. Short and sweet. Yes, the man there in the pink check shirt.
Thank you. I was just an observation.
By the way, I've only got about 40 seconds left.
Just an observation, really. I mean, Trump's been elected into the US to be leader of the free world, and they seem so buoyant. He's hit the ground running. I mean, over here, our government just hit the ground. It seems a complete contrast.
Okay. That's there in the red tie and the glasses. Can you see? Just yes.
Thank you. Alastair, first of all, how do you know? You've got a crystal ball that Elon Musk and Trump are going to fall out with each other.
I don't.
I mean, that's absolute. Yeah, but you've just said it.
No,
live
I've just said knowing a bit about the personalities.
Look, I make services, and we need America. No matter what anybody thinks, Trump was voted in by his people. Whether he's popular or he's not over here makes not one shred of difference.
I didn't say it did.
We do need the Americans on our side, especially what's going on at the minute in Europe.
Correct.
All right.
We're not disagreeing.
That's all I've got to say.
Disagreeing. And also, by the way, we need to spend more on defence as well, regardless of whether Trump's...
We are out of time, I'm afraid.
Which the Prime Minister committed to today.
We are out of time. He didn't give a date, did he?
Okay.
I don't think he did. But all right, we're out of time.
More of our GDP on defence than the Tory government.
OK, we are out of time. Whew, that's all for this week. Remember, we are in Beckenham, South London next week. If you want to come be part of the programme, we are on iPlayer and Sounds as well. From our audience here in Lincoln, thank you to the panel, thank you to you, and thank you at home for watching. Bye-bye.